get this question a lot during the conference, and we've asked it on this show. Where do we stand in Michigan today from an economic perspective? We've come a long way in the last 5-6 years, but where are we really in our comeback?
So I'll give you kind of a schizophrenic answer, Nolan, which is on the one hand, you're right. We've come a long way in the last 5 or 6 years. We went from being 50th out of 50 on most metrics to, at least around close to middle of the pack right now. But, the flip side of that is we're still around middle of the pack when you look at per capita income, when you look at GDP, things like that. And, the concern that we have is now's not the time to be complacent with our accomplishments. We got to keep the foot on the gas pedal.
Well, there are policies left undone in the state, right? I mean, we did a lot in the governor's first term. He got distracted by Flint, and now there's I've described it as a sense that we've stalled in terms of our policy making on behalf of economic growth.
Well,
is that fair or not fair?
A lot of what's left undone is really big, hairy problems that we need to tackle. Things like unfunded liabilities and other big issues. Why?
I said right. I mean,
right.
We thought that was going to be what this second term would be all about. I mean, the governor put some basic, really vital basic fixes in place, and then the second phase was supposed to be the things like you're talking about, dealing with pension costs and other liabilities. But we seem to have stalled. Is that a function of an uncooperative legislature?
I think that there was more consensus around that agenda that he pursued in the first term. I mean, I think everybody knew we were in financial crisis and those were things we had to do. Now I think there's less consensus around things like, when you talk about unfunded liabilities, the term itself is confusing. People don't know really what it means. Or infrastructure. Boy, that's a big, set of issues that are within that. So I think there's not as much consensus as around those.
But we know that we've got a business-friendly governor for the next 18 months and a legislature that sometimes business-friendly, sometimes not. We don't know what to expect after November of 2018. I mean, we should be getting things done, shouldn't we? And what's on your wish list over these next 18 months?
Well, one of the things that we're working on with business leaders from Michigan is the Good Jobs Package. We need that kind of closing ability with an incentive that makes sense so we can be in the running for these larger projects. And that's one thing that has a broad coalition of support we want to see done in the short term. Now,
the legislature did pass the Brownfield package that was, they sort of, Detroit requested that Dan Gilbert got right behind. You see this as an important complement to that piece of legislation.
We do, because I mean, you can make the investments in new buildings, but you got to fill them up with jobs. And so the two really, I think, work hand in hand.
What are we missing out on?
Well,
by not having these incentives.
Well, but what we're getting the organic growth of existing Michigan companies. We're getting the growth of companies that have to be in Michigan because they have to be part of the supply chain of the auto industry. What we're not getting are new investments that are going to help diversify the industry, the base that we have, and that's really important because with auto sales that have peaked right now, we got to make sure that absolutely the mobility sector is important, but we got to have a few other oars in the water too.
So I was over in Grand Rapids the other day, and
thank you for spending your tourist dollars there.
It was a good time, but I mean, you guys seem to be at full capacity. I mean, it looked like things were going full steam. Is there a big difference between East and West still in Michigan's economy?
No, I think Doug's comment about where Michigan needs to go is true for Grand Rapids and other communities. Our ascendancy is not assured. We have a lot of things we need to continue to work on and get right if we want to continue to grow. But one of the great metrics that we've seen is Detroit is starting to grow, and we're seeing that in West Michigan too. We're adding population. And I love that the governor set that goal of hitting 10 million people, because I think it's going to, with things like the Good Jobs Package, My Thrive, these other tools that help create a real sense of place with good paying jobs, that's going to help us grow the population.
But the reality, guys, is everybody wants what we want. They want jobs, big employers, new tax dollars. Are we competitive?
I think we're better than we were. I mean, yes, our tax climate actually is probably very competitive. Top 10.
Who's more competitive?
It depends on the issue. It depends on the metric. I think that first of all, we have a geographic disadvantage. When you look at the migration of people in the country, it's going to the Sun Belt. It's picked right back up again where it was before the recession hit. So we've got to work against that, which means to, the point about population, we have got to have a reason for people to want to stay here and move here for good jobs. And good jobs, I think, is the big reason we can be successful.
So you guys are up here twisting arms and Sweet talking lawmakers, I imagine, and
more sweet talking than twisting.
There you go.
I consider it legislator education.
So we'll let you get back to it. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thanks, Nolan.